Hey, Brandon.
Hey, Marcin, you made it even with our time zone switch.
Yes. Better for me. It's earlier. It's 6 p.m. instead of 7, so.
So it makes it easier for at least the next 3 weeks.
Yup.
Yeah, my last meeting was a little people showing up and thrown off by time zones for a little bit. And of course, they thought we only had 2 weeks of the time zones being off. And I'm like, this year we get to be different. We're now consistently inconsistent.
I see. I hope somebody will join. I mean, that nobody missed that, but let's see. What do you think, Brandon, right now about this compatibility stuff? Do you agree with the artifact? That we continue with artifact and um, basically extending the image spec a little bit with proposed features and so on?
I have concerns still from for runtime operators specifically. And I didn't hear a hard no from the container D, which kind of surprised me. I figured they would jump up and say, oh, heck no, that we don't want to do that. So that surprised me, but I don't know if it's because my understanding of their problem and theirs is just different, and I'll be wrong in that case because they know it better than I do, or is because they just don't see the follow-on issues this could potentially generate by separating it out. So
See,
that that's the little bit that has me slightly concerned, but I don't know how important that is because I can also see this being split into two different problems. And if it's split into two different problems and we have two different solutions for each one for each problem that we're solving, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that
mhm.
makes sense of how you would say, hey, for this problem, use this solution, for this problem, use that solution, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for the image selection stuff, yeah, I think this proposal E and maybe A combine both of them would be something good. And Stephen or Phil said something interesting. I mean, very good point that container D will work with this what you will provide, like with the images itself. It doesn't mean that you have to use container D to pull appropriate image, right? So if there is a use case that somebody wants to do image selection based on the artifact, they can do it themselves and provide the image to the container D over some tools. But that could be,
It
I understand, problematic because you have to use another tool to do that. But
it
I,
takes a
yes,
responsibility away from container D that it has traditionally had.
yeah,
And so I think that would give users a very inconsistent, I mean, container D can do image selection. I'm not saying it does, but it can. And if something else above it decided to, that's also possible. But it gets into a very awkward scenario of, okay, now where are these lines being drawn between the tools? What are the user expectations of that?
Yeah. Another alternative would be to have this pluggable way that users provide their own mechanism for this image selection. That's kind of accepted in the containerd repository or something like that.
Yeah. And because there's so often we're looking at things like Kubernetes or other cluster management solutions, sometimes this problem gets a little bit more muddy because it gets solved at different levels by different tools in different ways.
Yeah. I didn't expect this gonna grow so much. I mean, when I thought about the compatibility, it was a very simple scenario that it's compatible with the host or not, and nothing else. I would wait. Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say we're past 5 after, so I feel like people have gone as
Yeah,
far past as we normally do.
we'll just wait 3 or 4 minutes more. If nobody joins, then we can postpone the meeting to the next one.
What are your thoughts on Proposal E in general that I put up there?
I like it. I mean, I thought about something similar at the beginning to extend some maybe platform variants, but if we are using those OS features and we have wide like list of possible supported features defined by us, that's totally fine, and it will improve the image selection itself, at least for us. I mean, we don't have a very specific needs regarding that, but in my opinion,
So I've been going through the process of adding the different variants for ARM, because, sorry, AMD, AMD 64. We've already got variants for ARM today where you've got the V6, V7, and now it's V8. And apparently there's a V8.1. I need to look into that.
yeah,
But for ARM, if you compile with Go, there are today 4 different variants of ARMs, or keep speaking it, these things are too close together. AMD 64, the Intel AMD variant, they have 4 different variants today under Go, and we keep our specs kind of in line with theirs. And those are determined by which syscalls or API, whatever it is, whatever features the CPUs are providing. And those make sense to put directly into that field. And so I feel like there is almost a one-to-one mapping of saying, hey, does the CPU support this feature or not? And then you just kind of check a couple of those and it becomes a more granular version of what is in the variant that we're building right now today. For someone that says, hey, my code actually uses the CPU feature that we need to have in there. So I feel like there is a definition that we can leverage for that. It is, on the other hand, a very hard requirement of we are mapping this one-to-one to specific things, exact hardware requirements. We can document in our spec. And if you try to use anything outside of that, you're in undefined territory where things just don't even know how to work with it.
yeah,
From the runtime side, it makes it very nice because runtimes can detect this too. And so they can be very explicit and say, hey, they said they needed the CPU feature, is not there. We can't even run this at all. Don't even bother trying. And so it's a very different check from the annotation where you're being very loose and saying, hey, if you don't recognize it at all, just kind of ignore it and keep going about your day and assume it will just kind of work. Where when we start putting this into the feature table, it's a very hard requirement of it must be there. We just don't even try to run it.
yeah, yeah. I understand. That's referring also to this what Bjorn said last time that telco, at least my approach is completely different from your approach. That we are more close-minded in that case. That we have to be very specific about hardware and stuff. So basically, uh, I'm not sure what's the good way for to warn people not to use it if you really don't need to use it, because that's the thing in this scenario that exactly as you said that if some people are too specific about stuff, there's high risk that it's not gonna work. I mean, it's gonna close the area where it can run and so on. So that's why I thought, and our first initial idea was to build artifact that is completely optional and doesn't influence any like doesn't influence how images are basically uh, where they are scheduled or when they are run and so on. But it's not solving HPC use cases and so on. My point with this artifact is that you have some standalone entity, you have some specification for that, and if you require, you can put some additional metadata for that, and and at the same time you can ignore it once you extend these features inside the image index or whatever. You put some hard requirements in there, right? And there is a high risk that people will use it as they should not.
I think how we discover it and decide to build that feature set or artifact, whatever we're going to do, the compatibility spec, that's going to be very important. If it's something that users are specifically putting in as one-offs and saying, okay, this one image requires this one thing, that's a very different problem from I just ran an automatic discovery tool and it just discovered whatever the heck the GitHub Actions runner in the cloud happened to have on the machine that I built it on.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's a tough one, tough decision, how, which direction to go and how to do it the best way.
Because I know I was saying it last week, but the place I don't want to be is all of our laptops now need to have the same hardware the GitHub Actions builder happens to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I suspect they've got some beefy nodes they're running this stuff on.
My feelings about that is that the compatibility will not be used by 90% of users. It's just gonna be used by some very specialized cases, like telco, maybe HPC or some other stuff.
That's what I want. What I want and what people do are not necessarily the same thing. I've discovered when we added the artifacts when we first created that, people were saying, great, you got artifacts. Let's put everything in artifact. And we're just like, just because we gave you a new feature doesn't mean you should rewrite everything that already exists and turn it into an artifact. That doesn't, you need a reason
Yeah,
to do it.
yeah, it can get out of the control, right? Out of control. So I understand that.
Yeah, we defined in the early days there was a part of the reason the artifact stuff work we were doing with the refers took so long to go through was partway through, we had defined in the initial stages a new manifest type. And the new manifest type, if you push that to a registry today, just it's not going to work. The registry is going to say, I don't know what that manifest is, invalidate or reject. And so we had kind of documented, hey, first use the image manifest like we've been using forever. And then after time, we can start figuring out when it makes sense to start generating the new artifact manifest and then start using that in the future. And none of the users wanted that. All the users immediately were saying, we're going to turn this on day one. We've already turned it on. You know, the spec isn't even GA. We've already turned it on. We're using this and all of our stuff is already out there doing this. And we're just like, but what registry are you using on? Well, the one registry we've gotten. How is that portable? We don't care. I was just like, that goes against everything OCI was about of trying to make this stuff compatible and interoperable and everything else. And so there was a big flare up from that. We ended up dropping it from the spec and that caused even more chaos. And so when I see this stuff, I get very nervous of as soon as you add a new feature, people will use it whether you want them to or not in ways that you didn't plan for them to use it.
It's hard to predict how that's gonna influence the OCI standards in the future and what kind of mess it's gonna bring, right?
Yeah, it really
And
is.
I understand that. Just wondering what would be the best solution for all of that if we don't introduce artifact or if we don't even change the image index and we leave things like that. Like for example, we get the proposal A and proposal E merged. Maybe the solution is that telco and HPC roll out their own stuff in that case.
I feel like A&E would get you 75 to 90% of the way people want to get to where they want to go. And so it would be an improvement. And it would also give runtimes a direction of, hey, those annotations you've been ignoring before, we're going to start needing to depend on that. So start adding that feature over there. And that would That would be a nice plus, I think. But I do think there are people that want to use this for something a lot bigger. They want that external artifact. They've got use cases that are bigger than this. And like I say, if it's a separate solution to a separate problem, I can see there being some value to that. And if it can't be done on OCI, I could easily see us being a spec in general. We've got specs out there for how you do infrastructure as code, and a lot of that just makes sense of saying, hey, let's design the tooling out there that can say, here's a node provisioning spec of some kind, and we're being IAC tool independent of just defining what the nodes are we're running this code on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I have to talk again with Joe about that, like basically start again the discussion from zero to see if like consider how it's gonna influence OCI and so on. I understand the reasoning, like because there is a requirement by telco that they have to one standard, one solution which is standardized by OCI, and you do it everything in one way. But the impact that it can bring to the users might be unpredictable, and it might be bad for the others. So yeah, let's see how this is gonna go. I guess
Looks like
nobody. Yeah.
I was about to say the same thing. It looks like the regular crowd is out for daylight savings today. They're probably all sleeping in and missing their alarm clocks.
So I guess we will postpone the meeting and talk the next Monday. This is Monday, not Tuesday. So yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing that I have a talk on Kubernetes Contributor Summit about this compatibility stuff. It's kind of closed group. It's not gonna roll out at KubeCon or something like that. That people will just hear about some kind of idea and so on. So I just want to hear opinions from those guys, what they think about that, if they see a value from that in Kubernetes and so on, without suggesting any solution or without suggesting that it's gonna be implemented or not. I just want to present what are the proposals, where they are we going, and that we are still discussing stuff. And yeah.
Speaking of KubeCon, I'm assuming that next week all meetings are going to get canceled.
So sorry again.
So speaking of KubeCon, I'm assuming that all meetings next week
Yes.
that aren't at KubeCon are going to get canceled. And so this meeting and the other OCI meetings, we do have an OCI uh, event at KubeCon itself. I think it was on Friday. Yeah, Friday early my time. So that would be an option for folks who want to chat on site. I don't know how many people are going to attend that, just because at our last OCI meeting, we didn't see anybody raise their hand saying, yeah, that I'll be there kind of stuff.
Okay. Then I will raise my hand and I will say that I will be there. Maybe somebody would like to still talk about this compatibility stuff if they are interested.
I think there was at least one other person that wasn't at the meetings that was saying, hey, please, can we have a meeting? So, Amy jumped on it, got us room and all that normal stuff that we typically do for these things. But I don't know how many other regulars are going to be there on site. So you might get to hang out with a few people interested. You might have the whole room to yourself. Hopefully not.
Cool. Let's see how this is gonna go.
Yeah. If I'm assuming you're going to be there on site. So
Yeah.
if you need the details, I've got 9 a.m. Eastern, but room E04, and the time is 2 to 4 o'clock on Friday the 22nd local time.
Okay. Great. I think Phil is going there as well. At least
Okay,
I read somewhere that he will be at KubeCon. Maybe he will attend the meeting. So
nice. Yeah, I will be sure to wake up bright and early, and entirely possible that I messed up the time zones on this, and so it might be 10 a.m. We'll see which time it is. I need to go back through the calendar because I did it before the daylight savings change.
yeah. Hello, Patrick. we just finished the meeting, I think.
Great. Daylight saving.
Happens to all of us.
Yeah, I didn't realize actually that was going on this weekend. Okay.
Is there,
Okay,
anything you'd like
so
to chat about, Patrick, while you're here before we like run away? Going once,
Well,
going
if you're
twice.
if you are done already, then meeting is over.
Oh, we were chatting a little bit about E and a little bit about some other stuff, but we were kind of starting to wrap things up. But if you've got some stuff you want to talk about,
No,
got a
actually not. I
captive
was
audience.
well, great audience, big audience, very big. No, not really. I can actually check what you were chatting about in the recording or something like that. I didn't have any specifics at the moment.
okay. So talk to you soon. Let's see when exactly. So yeah.
Yep.
Have a good day, guys. Yeah.
If not next week, then the week after. Enjoy KubeCon.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a nice KubeCon.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Cheers.